Hello everybody, welcome to Fantastic Books MABLE, massive autumn book launch event. I'm Kate Russell, tech reporter, author and professional ferret mum, and it is my pleasure to introduce today's session. Today's video spotlights the epic fantasy genre. We've got readings from Stuart Aken, who is absolutely awesome, is going to be reading from A Seared Sky, a trilogy comprising the novels Joinings, Partings and Convergence. Alex Janaway is going to be reading from End of Empire, a trilogy comprising of three novels, and those are Vanquished, Resistance and Resurgence. And there is going to be a very special reading that is not recorded live from Janet Blackwell from the Filey Chronicles, which is two young adult fantasy novels, The Bridge and the Butterflies and The Five Feathers. Sadly, Janet recently lost her battle with cancer, but she was a real fighter, and she'll be absolutely delighted that her content is going to be, or her book, her reading is going to be played for you. We were blessed that she left us with this wonderful series in the living world, and I can tell you, as a fantasy writer myself, I appreciate the idea that she is now immortal in our world with her story. Epic fantasy novels often feature anthropomorphized animals, and there are a few in the stories you're going to be hearing today. Ivdalon in A Seared Sky is something of an elderly ferret type character. She's curious, likes to explore, but is not as active as she once was. I'm looking forward to the day when that can be said of these two. Actually, no, I'm not. Strike that. I love them exactly the way they are. In the End of Empire series, the gnomes take on and amplify the very worst of ferret-like traits, apparently. As the author himself puts it, those gnomes are B-words. We're a family-friendly channel, we don't say that stuff. To find the best of ferret-like traits, the chaotic Cade displays a level of resourcefulness that surprises even herself. She might be a thief and a trickster, but she's loyal to those she trusts, and she has one hell of a bite when she chooses to use it. And if that doesn't sound like a ferret, I don't know what does. And Meg and Will, the main characters in The Bridge and the Butterflies and The Five Feathers, have a bond not unlike the bond that develops between ferrets. These two are sisters, and they're very strongly bonded. They play, they fight, sometimes they enrage each other, but when the chips are down, they are fiercely loyal. So that is what's coming up in your epic fantasy genre launch. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin.
Vanquished by Alex Janaway, Book 1 of the End of Empire series. Chapter 1, The Last Night. Owen Durl stepped onto the launching platform. Set on the highest level of the roosting tower, it gave him a perfect view of the day turning to dusk. A few stars were already visible, bright white pinpricks that on any other night would have been a joy to look upon. The sky was covered with patches of oppressive grey-black clouds, threatening heavy showers. The breeze would keep those clouds away from the city. It was just a pity plenty more were coming in from the high country, and they looked nastier. It would be touch and go whether the battle would be over before they hit. Owen turned his attention back to the matter in hand and made his way across the platform. "Arno," he murmured, "are you ready?" The young male eagle watched his approach and extended his wings, giving them a little stretch before settling down. Arno was still growing, big enough to take his weight, but small enough to take only half the space of the platform, a rough semicircle some 15 feet at its widest point, and a similar depth. Owen put his foot into the stirrup and hauled himself into the saddle. Below him, Arno shifted restlessly. Owen knew the bird was eager to launch, to get into the air where he would feel free. Owen was less eager. He knew what this night meant, this late autumn evening on the edge of the Empire. He was in no mood to rush what were likely to be his last hours in this world. He was as scared now as he'd been on his first flight, as conscious of his own mortality as that day he'd first entrusted his life to Arno. Yet it didn't seem real, not possible that he and everyone else would soon be dead. Owen twisted his body and leaned forward, watching his fellow eagle riders busy themselves with their own mounts. He hoped they might look over. He wanted to wave at them, maybe hear them shout some words of encouragement. This might be the last chance to speak to someone human. He heard laughter in his head, a light feminine sound. Someone was pulsing to him, sending a message straight from their mind to his. Are they ignoring you, Owen? You're practically falling off your saddle to get their attention. Owen recognised the voice and looked about, trying to spot the speaker. Maybe she was already airborne, watching him from the sky. Down here. Owen looked down into the gap between him and the adjoining platform. Below, Jenna was looking up at him, a broad smile on her face. He felt blood rush to his cheeks, his forehead grow uncomfortably warm. Even in the dark, he couldn't hide the rush of embarrassment he always felt when someone called him out, and it had to be Gemma who did it. He often wondered what she saw when she looked at him. A lad barely grown into adulthood, a shock of red hair, green eyes, ruddy cheeks, and just the barest hint of stubble. Not exactly the image of a warrior born, or the finest example of an eagle rider from the highlands of the Tisan Empire. Whatever she saw, it wasn't going to be anywhere near what he saw in her. A proud, confident woman with sparkling brown eyes and braided chestnut hair pooling down her lithe body. Sorry, I just wanted to say good luck, he pulsed back to her. I know, Owen, she responded, her bright smile fading, her lips pursing into a tight line. She raised her hand. Good luck. See you on the other side, she shouted up at him. Owen raised his hand in reply. You too. He wished he had something else to say, but was grateful she'd given him that much.
Hello, I'm Alex Janaway. I'm the author of the End of Empire trilogy, and I've been asked by the publisher, Fantastic Books, to give you my thoughts on what makes up really good epic fantasy. Well, I've gone and made a little bit of a video, so should we watch that first? So, epic fantasy. What does it need to be? It needs to be epic. And of course, it's all about the characters. You need a good adventuring party. You need the young, inexperienced hero. You need the comic relief. And you need the old wise mentor. I hope you enjoyed that short but very professionally made video talking about my thoughts on what makes great epic fantasy. But let's be serious for a minute. The characters really are the most important thing. Getting your characters right, creating individuals that people, readers, will want to follow for a period of time, see their stories through to the end, hoping for the best but maybe preparing for the worst. But either way, for me, it's all about them. And when I'm writing these stories, I do often find that my characters take on a life of their own. It seems a very glib thing to say, and it's said a lot, but it's really true. And my stories will sometimes go places that I wasn't expecting. And that's really cool as a writer, because that's what keeps it really fun for me, discovering stuff as I'm going, seeing where the story takes me. And I really enjoy that. And I think the characters are the better for it by allowing them to breathe a little and take up the space themselves. So those are my thoughts on what makes good fantasy. And I hope you enjoyed the video and you enjoy listening to some other great thoughts from all the other great writers we have as part of Fantastic Books. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Janet Blackwell, and I've written an exciting fantasy trilogy set on the Filey coastline entitled The Filey Chronicles. Today I'm going to be reading the first chapter from the first book in the series, which is called The Bridge and the Butterflies. She came to us at midnight in the back of a police van. I was in my room in the attic when she arrived, angry that I'd been made to stay in all night to wait for her. I'd missed Will's party. There was no way I was going downstairs to play Happy Families. The policewoman threw open the back doors of the van, and the next minute this girl was out on the street. If I hadn't been sulking, I might have felt sorry for her. It was obvious that the police were happy to get rid. Mum had said that she was about 14, the same age as me, but she looked a lot younger dressed like that. She was very small, and she had a long blonde plait right down to her waist. It was tied with a ribbon. I saw Mum rush out. I opened my window a little to try to hear what they were saying, hoping that there'd been a mistake and that the girl would be taken away. It didn't seem likely. Suddenly a firework exploded like a gunshot, and one of the policewomen strode off in the direction of the beach. The girl just stood there, shivering under the streetlight in a pair of pyjamas that were way too big for her. She was gripping a black bin bag as though she thought Mum was going to take it from her. I noticed she had no shoes on her feet. Just for a moment she glanced up. I thought that she'd seen me, but then I realised she was looking up at the sky and the fireworks being set off, probably from kids messing about on the sands. They'd be out celebrating the start of the summer holidays. Not like me. I couldn't stop thinking about the party at Will's. It all seemed so unfair. Mum had taken her cardigan off and put it around the girl's shoulders. They walked towards the house. I slammed my window shut. The girl wasn't my problem. Well, not then, anyhow. I'm going to read for you the first chapter from the second book in the series, The 5 Feathers. Chapter 1. They were looking for something. That was all I knew for certain. A strange noise had woken me up in the night. I didn't know what time it was, but it was pitch black. I thought I'd been dreaming. I tried to reach for my phone, but for some reason I found I couldn't move at all. Before I could work out what was happening, there was a clattering sound. Something had fallen from my desk. I tried to push myself up again, but it was impossible. There was a terrible smell of dampness, mould, something rotting. It reminded me of the stench of the old lobster pots piled up at Bridlington Harbour. Now I could hear 2, maybe 3 voices whispering in the darkness, and I sensed they were angry, even though they spoke in a language I hadn't heard before. I must be still asleep, I thought. That's why I can't do anything. That's why I can't cry out for help. Things on my desk were being touched by them. Papers were being scattered. The metal box I kept my beach treasures in was tipped over. My drawers were emptied out onto the floor. One of them edged nearer to me, but I couldn't move. There was the shock of someone's hot breath on my face, the foul odour of dead things. Then I heard the click of its teeth. A white light flashed across the bed, and just for a moment I caught a glimpse of the creature by my side. Long, straggly black hair, sharp features, yellow eyes. "Where is it?" it whispered. A pain seared through my head, and I knew it was trying to get into my mind to find what it was looking for. Then, I don't remember the rest. When I next opened my eyes, light was streaming in through the gap in the curtains. Nothing on my desk appeared to have been moved. I shivered. It must have been another dream. There was a cold wind blowing across the room, and I leapt out of bed to close a window I didn't remember opening. A grey December day in Bridlington. I went to pick up my uniform from the chair, and that's when I saw it. A large letter W had been scratched onto my wardrobe door.
Janet Blackwell, who sadly died earlier this year, was a good friend of mine. We were members of the same writing group, and for that reason I saw her series, the Filey Chronicles, right through from the first lines on the page to the final manuscripts. As a writing group, we shared all the stages of producing a book with Janet, from those first moments right through to submissions, the inevitable rejections, and then finally that amazing moment when a publisher says yes. Jan was ecstatic to have the first book in the series accepted. This is The Bridge and the Butterflies, and you can hear her reading from the first chapter of a book that is a real page-turner from a first really gripping opening. Then just over a year later, the second in the series, The Five Feathers, came out. And again, as a member of the writing group, I saw that book from its first moments right through to that final manuscript. Again, you can hear Janet reading from the first chapter here. Janet was well into the third book, as yet untitled, when she was diagnosed with the illness that eventually became terminal. She died before she could finish the book, but she left a substantial manuscript, and her family do hope that it may eventually be put into shape and be available for publication to complete the story of Meg, Will and their friends, and the strange connection between this world and another one, linked by a bridge that it could be fatal to cross. Janet wasn't simply a writer of stories for teenagers. She wrote some amazing memoirs of her childhood and her university years that were both moving and very, very funny, that she hoped to get into shape for publication one day. She was also an amazing editor. My most recent books, Life Ruins and Someone Who Isn't Me, owe a lot to her editing skills. The writing group wasn't just a writing group. It was the curry evening group. It was the glass of wine in the garden on a summer's evening group. It was the going for a walk group. It was the theatre group. In other words, it was a friendship group, and we have lost a vital member. But Janet's books still remain.
A Seared Sky, a trilogy by Stuart Aken. Book 1, Joinings. When a misjudged omen undermines a tyrant's rule, how will he ensure his survival? When the Skyfire arrives early, Daglakaz sets out for the ancient homeland to harvest a new godwood and exchange virgin gifts. He must lead his pilgrims hundreds of leagues over pirate-infested seas, across hostile lands, and return triumphant before the Seared Sky dies back to normality. In his father's absence, the renegade Aklon risks torture and death to bring justice to the people. Mind talk with a wise man on the distant mainland has opened his eyes to the evil underlying the society he inhabits. And while seeking truth, he finds a soulmate in the most unexpected place. Seeing his daughter Tumalind wrongly chosen as a virgin gift, religious fanatic Aglidron follows the mission to right the wrong. Okintala, her betrothed, helps kidnap the rightful victim to take her over unknown seas and lands, knowing they could face violent death at the end of their journey. Book 2, Partings. Mistake follows mistake, but the despotic leader is determined to carry on a quest that risks disaster for all, but promises reward for him. In spite of signs he may be wrong, Daglakaz goes ahead with the pilgrimage. Events expose the unexpected fate of his daughter Jodisa Lai, bringing violent threat to his life. Different versions of history raise serious doubts, but he still pursues the Skyfire, only to see his virgin gifts captured by wild men. Will he recover them intact so his mission can continue? Convinced the time is ripe for his planned uprising on the island, Aklon G acts, causing civil strife and a dangerous confrontation with an army vastly outnumbering his own forces. Will his concern for justice and his willingness to trust people result in danger to his paramour and in his capture and painful death? Beset by assassins, Okintala is forced into a foreign war. Wounded, he seeks the help of a group of brave and talented women. Pursuing their dreams, he and Tumalind face a great danger, hardship and enforced separation? Will her courage and resourcefulness allow her to remain loyal to Okintala? And will his tenacity rescue her from the dangers she faces? Book 3, Convergence. Wise Ivdalon finally discovers how the world is in danger, but only young Tourmalind, a gifted female mind-talker, has the means to save it. Daglakaz's fanatical high priest fights to prevent changes that will undo all his power and prestige, engaging with evil forces to get his way. Aklonji, fighting to save the future of his islanders, faces war, treachery and violent death to bring justice to his land and security to the woman he loves. Tourmalind, gifted and brave, faces unknown terrors and the peril of utter destruction for herself as she sends her beloved Okintala into great danger in the hope of saving the world from evil. Joinings, Chapter 1, Perils of Office. Someone had betrayed him. Otherwise, how had they found him? Aklon glanced over his shoulder and counted 7 in the pack. 3 were holy ones. All bore arms, but only 2 carried bows. His dipping and zigzagging wasted their arrows, but he couldn't run forever. He must hide soon. The mire would suffice with its tall reeds and unreliable tracks through the wetlands. Would they have planned for that? The Holy Ones weren't noted for strategy, so a trap seemed unlikely. More probably they'd discovered one of the few and tortured him or her and acted impulsively on whatever details they'd burned and carved from that unhappy flesh. He worried about who they'd broken. No time for such concerns, though the thought of one of his disciples suffering was heartbreaking. He loved them all. But if he didn't escape soon, they'd kill him, or worse, make him captive. Daglakaz had increased the price on his head 100-fold, making it worth the risk of taking him alive. He jumped a narrow stream, a good sign. Slow-running groundwater flowed at the edges of the mire. They'd be reluctant to follow him in there. He glanced again, and as he turned, an arrow sliced the skin at the top of his left arm. The archer was a female regular. Would that he could convert her to the few. He'd have need of such skill come the start of the cause. He registered her face for the future, a soldier of his father's army. How loyal, though, and how easily converted by truth. Ahead, a clump of tall rushes promised sanctuary after the chase across the plain. He was beginning to tire after 2 leagues of swift pursuit. The hunters were strung out, some a few hundred paces behind the leading pair. A male holy one, evidently more pious than usual and intent on glory, put on a burst of speed and passed the 2 regulars in the lead. The naked man ran as though possessed, clearly intent on cutting off Aklon's escape before tall reeds and foul waters concealed him. Already the stench filled his nostrils, making breathing difficult. He gulped in deep breaths nevertheless, the sickening stench no match for the threat of death by prolonged torture. The Holy One was on his heels as he rounded the clump. 200 more paces would set him in the first outliers of the mire itself. Stand upon stand of reeds and rushes, even taller than him, forming a maze where he could truly lose them. Aklon checked. He faced the Holy One, sword drawn. The man seemed suddenly perplexed, as if he hadn't considered the consequences of his actions. Aklon, feeling nothing but loathing for this class of follower, whilst hating the need to kill, skewered him without resistance. He jerked his sword free of the man's corpse, snatched the other weapon from his assailant's limp hand, and ran on before the others could fall on him. He put on a last spurt, fear of torture and its consequences for the few, pushing him beyond even his normal endurance. The original pack leaders, perhaps inspired by hopes of glory, were gaining. Aklon stumbled over the rough ground and almost fell. He must concentrate, must keep alert. But there was some intrusion into his body, something working to detain him. He could feel his heart slowing, his breathing becoming laboured. The small wound on his arm throbbed. Poison. The arrowhead must have been dipped in one of the aconite preparations. The one that killed, or the other which would leave him unable to move but more sensitive to pain? That depended on who'd prepared it, but judging by the speed of its action, it would soon succeed one way or the other. Breathe shallow and fast, Aklon. It'll help. Concentrate. I'm with you. The voice in his head was comforting. Surprising, but good to know Ivdulon was with him in this danger. Ahead, reeds and rushes waved with more than merely his stumbling gait. He knew he would collapse, and the hunters were close enough for him to hear their calls and threats. A few more paces. He felt almost finished, the day fading, but his mind alert enough to know approaching dusk alone did not take the light. Hold on, I need you, Aklon. Hold on and run. Keep your eyes open. I can see for you, even if your own vision fades. Trust me. Stay with me. He had no choice. He must trust Ivdulon, a man he'd never met, a man he spoke to in his mind, a man who lived far away on the mainland. He could no longer see, his world a blank, black void. But he kept turning, twisting, still running. His legs had lost all feeling, the ground beneath his feet no longer solid, but still he ran. Whether he ran round or through obstructions, he had no way of telling. Whether they still pursued him, he didn't know. He ran, blind, dead to all intents and purposes, a dead man running for his life. Something made him slow and turn left, run. He felt the imperative to turn again, run a short distance, turn again, run again. From nowhere, it seemed, a familiar voice intruded into his mind. Take care, Aklon, I love you, despite your betrayal. Of all the women in his life, why his sister? And why now? Then all was black and nothing.